We're starting off today's episode by getting a first preview of the top of this upcoming draft class. And if I could just give you one quick preview, it would be point guards galore. We're going to take a look at the top 5 consensus prospects at this point in the season. We're starting this preview with Damian Harvey, a 6'8" point guard out of the University of North Carolina. He is really kind of a perfect prospect, almost, you could say. He is one of those guys touted up since his high school years. 6'8", obviously excellent size for the point guard position, and with that he can score at all 3 levels of the court. You know, he's a threat from everywhere. He can pass, he can handle. Defensively, he's also really good, uses that size. He is an excellent athlete. Sometimes with these 6'8" guys, they're more strong than they are quick, but Harvey is still very fast in his own right at 6'8". He projects to be a terror for NBA defenses from the first moment he gets on the court, and very much worthy of his consensus @1 overall spot right now. Any team who gets him gets an instant upgrade to the point guard slot for the next, at least 7 years until he hits that restricted free agency, but more likely that 10+ year guy that can be the guy that leads your team to a lot of postseason success. This is the guy that everybody's rushing for at the top of this class, and rightfully so. He's really, really good and projects to be an asset really at every single level of basketball. And so really going to be kind of a race to the top here this year. As you can see, doesn't really have much in the way of weaknesses. Our scouts have a different idea of him than the consensus. Consensus says that he's a little bit worse of a perimeter scorer. Our scouts are higher on that, while they're lower on his defense and playmaking than consensus. Harvey has 5 badges: Acrobat, Dream Shake, Hyperdrive, Needle Threader, and Rebound Chaser. He also has Hall of Fame ceiling, with no direct comparison in Darren Williams' floor. Adept at disrupting offense with his quick hands, can help out nicely right away, and could play on a 12-foot hoop with no weaknesses or no apparent medical concerns. And while he is very rightfully so #1 prospect, I think the #2 prospect in this draft is actually not very far behind him. Malachi Pope is a 6'6" point guard prospect in his own right, 220 pounds, very well built. You see here the clips we're getting is when these two faced off, and it was definitely a battle between these two. And while it was definitely close, I think Malachi Pope maybe even got the advantage here, and he's #2. And I think in most drafts, this is a #1 prospect. It's just Damian Harvey is such an incredible player that's why he's kind of that #1 guy. Pope, once again, much like we saw with Harvey, a guy who can really score at all 3 levels. He can dribble, he can pass, he can defend. No real weaknesses to point out with him to be concerned about. I think he is just as much of a surefire future star at point guard as Damian Harvey is. A position that's been very deep in the NBA for quite some time, and it's a position that we really need on our team. If I had to say what our #1 need is, I would say that we need a point guard. So the fact that there are a couple of really good ones at the very top and a lot of good ones further throughout. We'll go through more of the draft class, of course, once the season is over. We're just going through the top right now, and the top has a couple of excellent choices at the point guard position. Pope, a greedy defender. I will say he seems a little bit more willing to pass than a guy like Harvey. It feels like Harvey's more score first in his mindset, or Malachi Pope's maybe a little bit more balanced here. Another guy where the consensus is very different. This time our scouts are lower on his scoring versus consensus when it was the other way around with Harvey. But again, like, he doesn't have great post defense, so what? That's like probably of all these skills the least important of all of them for a point guard. I think even with his size, I think his post defense won't be that bad. Potential only showing B+ here, but he does have 9 badges, which is a ton, and I'd say pretty much going to be 100% chance of being the highest in this class. Agent 3, ankle braces, challenger, dimer, glove, hyperdrive, needle threader, open looks, workhorse. So he doesn't have any finishing badges, but he has badges for all 3 of the other categories. And his ceiling is also Hall of Fame, so it looks like he'll have a really high boom ceiling, but maybe not necessarily the highest regular potential. Gets to the rim okay, really good at finishing once he does. Should have good success at the NBA level, and tremendous leaping ability will help him crash the boards. So I'll say just skill set wise, I think Damian Harvey is number 1 in this class, but Malachi Pope has more badges and I think has more tendencies that I like. I haven't gone through all their tendencies quite yet, but I know that Malachi Pope has a much higher dish to open man tendency, which is an important one for the point guard position. Coming in at number 3 in this class is Francis Mullins, a teammate of Malachi Pope's at Duke. He is a center prospect, and it's much more of kind of the modern big where he's a little bit more mobile, still does a great job crashing the boards and playing that interior defense, but he can stretch out his range a little bit to 3, and he does have some playmaking chops. You know, he can dribble a bit, pass a bit as well. And so, you know, with the movement of where bigs are going, where it's no longer, you know, the 7'2", 250-pound guy, you're seeing a lot more of the more mobile guys. Mullins fits into that more than some of the other top prospects we've seen come out of the draft in recent years. But he doesn't have great actual ratings for perimeter defense. I just think he's a little bit more agile and mobile than some of the top centers we've seen in recent years. But don't get me wrong, just because he is a little bit more slender does not mean he sacrifices much on the interior because of it. Still very deceptively strong, still a great rim protector and rebounder, but he just has that more versatile skill set, and versatility is really becoming more and more important, it seems like, these days in the NBA. And so Mullins, our scouts, once again, very different. Like, our scouts are not agreeing with the consensus at all when it comes to players' abilities to score in this class, which is kind of weird. But we're a little bit higher on his playmaking, but even if it's just C+, like this consensus says, it's still really good for a center. And again, still a really good rebounder, good post defender as well. Solid athlete, good IQ, B+ potential, much like his teammate Pope, but as you'll see, has that all NBA upside, not upsize. But Pau Gasol and Hakeem Olajuwon, I like what I'm seeing here. I'll just say that. Looks like he has the potential to be something in the league. Fundamentally sound low post defender and excellent shot blocker with no significant weaknesses or medical problems. He has 4 badges here: pogo stick, fearless, break starter, and blinders. 7 foot 235 pounds. He is a little bit older, as both of Damian Harvey will project to be a teenager, while Malachi Pope will come in at 20 years old. And so there we have that. Coming in at number 4, we have yet another point guard here in Joshua Barry Carroll. And he's yet another guy who projects to be a good two-way player, who can play make, who can score, who can defend, who can do all of it. When I say that this is a great point guard class, I mean it. This is probably the best point guard class I've yet to see. He's a little bit smaller. He is only 6'2", but somehow has the longest wingspan of the 3-point guards we've previewed at 6'10", and you can see it here. Just these dangling arms here in these clips, and he uses that wingspan greatly here with his jump shot. He has a very high release point. He uses that wingspan to deflect shots and get in passing lanes as well. Very good player. He's a little bit older, been at Florida for quite some time now, but I think Barry Carroll is another guy who I think in most classes is going to be the best point guard available, but this is just an insane point guard class. He's not quite as well rounded as the other two before him because he only has really scoring abilities inside the arc. He will take the occasional wide open three, but he's not very good at it. But again, can score, can pass, can defend, can do pretty much everything. He's a lot, like I said, smaller, just 175 pounds, older as well, which is why I think he is in that third spot. Although consensus does have him above Malachi Pope, I just tend to disagree a bit on that one. He also, very good badge situation. We're seeing a lot of guys with good badge situations here. Space Creator, Hyperdrive, handles, Chase Down Artist, Ankle Breaker, and Ankle Races. His upside is Tony Parker, All-NBA. Would definitely love to get a guy like that. Rod Strickland, starter, is his floor. Adept at disrupting the offense with his quick hands. Could play on a 12-foot hoop, much like Harvey. And with the right tutelage, could become a star in this league. But he does lack conviction around the rim. Pass is physical, no problems there medically for Joshua Barry Carroll. Think he's a very good player. And then the last player that we're going to preview today is a guard, but not a point guard. He is Kelvin Fletcher out of Tennessee. He's the two guard that took over for Sidney Lowry. Sidney was there and was his teammate for Fletcher's freshman season, and Fletcher spent the last 2 seasons kind of taking over for him with that Tennessee squad and has done a very good job of it. He is the 3-and-D prospect of this draft. If he's not the best shooter, he's definitely top 5. And he plays really solid defense, 6'5" at that 2-guard spot. But calling him just, a 3-and-D is a little bit of disrespect onto what his game is. He does handle a lot of ball handling duties at Tennessee. Don't know if he has quite the handles to be much of an asset at the NBA level, but that is something to be seen. He's kind of a 3-and-D with upside prospect, which I think is very valuable in the league. Solid but not spectacular size for his position. Definitely, I'd say at least average, and just a skill set that's ready to come in and be impactful early. Has that all NBA upside with starter floor. Good playmaker. So that's the kind of upside part of that. Expands on his 3-and-D, but deadly accurate jump shooter is his calling card. Should be an all-star someday. He has 2 badges, corner specialist and off-ball pest. And looking at his skill set, there you have it. The 3 and the D are definitely what project to be his strengths early on, but he can play make a bit and he can score inside the arc as well. Great athlete, really solid IQ, and A potential. This is a guy that's gonna be, I think, a really good pick. Somebody you can get right around that top 5, and I think he's gonna be a really good player. Both, in year 1 with the upside to be, all-star plus, like his I'm pressing the wrong buttons here. Like this ceiling says, he has the potential to be really, really good in the league. And I think this is the best top 5 I have seen in the class, in the 3 drafts that we've had. And that's including year 1 where I created those 3 players, but I felt like there was a big drop off after that. Since then, I've just allowed 2K to create the classes. I thought year 2 was honestly kind of weak. I didn't want to say it at the time because, I wanted to keep interest in that draft high, and so I didn't want to call a draft weak. This draft is really good. There's a lot of players that we aren't even previewing today. We'll preview, like I said, again at the end of the season before the draft. I think this draft not only has the top end talent, but has a ton of depth. And so this has the potential to maybe even be one of the best draft classes of a generation, I do think. And I'm very excited to get to know more of this class as time goes along. For the trade deadline this year, there is one manual trade we are making. The Houston Rockets will be acquiring Trae Young in exchange for 2 unprotected picks. Jerry Childress, who was just a top 10 pick in this last class, so essentially 3 first-round picks, as well as Jeremy Grant. The Hawks are terrible this year, and the Rockets looking to win now. Here are the All-Stars for this season. Jokic, Steph, SGA, Butler, and Mobley starting for one side, with Giannis, Tatum, Durant, LaMelo Ball, and Jaylen Brown starting for the other. Booker, Anthony Edwards, Victor Wembanyama making it for his first time, Kyrie Irving, Kat, Ingram, Brandon Miller also making it for his first time, with on the other side Luka coming off the bench with Zion, Garland, Tyrese, Paolo the first time, Bam Adebayo, and Darren Anthony, first time All-Star in his second season. Now we're gonna hop into a little bit of gameplay today. Not a full game, but we are gonna watch the last 4:33 of a close game here against the Dallas Mavericks. Just not enough time for a full game with all of the other stuff that we did in today's episode, mainly the draft preview taking up so much time. But here, Luka gets himself to the line following the Andre Stevens 3 on the other end. Keeping things close. Wilson Fisher, pick and roll, top of the key. He's left wide open. Not viewed as a scoring threat, but when you give him that much space, he's certainly going to score. Luka versus Wilson Fisher is certainly an interesting matchup. If we were playing the Mavericks in a playoff series, that would not be the guy I'd be having guarding Luka. But Andre Stevens getting a couple of nice jump shots to fall down here in the late game. That's Jimmy Butler wearing 25 for Dallas, getting the mid-range jump shot to go. Lowry, that bucket is good, plus the foul on Clint Capella as he's barreling down the lane, and he completes the three-point play. 7 points with 2.5 minutes. We just get a couple more good possessions. This game should be over. Grant Williams, well defended. Nice rotations by the defense, and that is a miss. Lowry trying to score over Jimmy Butler, and he does so quite well. Things looking like it's going to be a Nashville victory here. Lowry just gets pickpocketed by Jimmy Butler. Mavericks can't really find anything in transition, but Jimmy does eventually pull the three. He missed the shot. Still a 7-point ball game. Andre Stevens barreling to the rim. Grant Williams with the foul. This one could all but seal this game, but he missed the first. Second free throw is up, and it's also a miss. Andre Stevens, who's been excellent in this last 4.5 minutes, had a chance to really seal the deal, and he just missed both free throws. He's not a terrible shooter. I think his rating is low 70s, if I'm correct. But then Sidney Lowry goes ahead and puts the final touches on this one. Up 9 with 40 seconds left. We'd end up winning it by 11. Sidney Lowry, 25, 4, and 8 on 16 shots. Andre Stevens, 24, 9, and 1 with 2 steals on just 13 shots. Baldwin put up 22 points on just 10 shots. Davidson shot 5 of 6 from the field. AC Stevens got double digits. Pretty much everybody shot well except for Fisher. We saw one of his 2 lone makes, but a very nice team win here against the Mavericks. And now it's Andre Stevens out with an injury that's going to keep him out for a while. I mean, we had 8 to 10 weeks out for our guy Lowry, and that wasn't obviously near as many. So we'll see how long Stevens is actually out. We're going to bring up Robinson off the bench. He's going to get these minutes. Baldwin going to play 32 now at power forward. Rebounding might suffer a bit, but we'll live with it. So here we are, made it to the end of the episode. Not a lot of gameplay with today's episode, but there's just a lot of non-gameplay aspects that I wanted to include in this episode. And so we'll go through some box scores of some wins. Here against the Magic, we would win, led by AC Stevens, 22, 8, and 3 blocks. Lowry also poured in 20 points. Andre Stevens, 16, 5, and 3 in that game. Wilson Fisher, almost a double-double. And then, of course, we saw this Mavericks box score here, and the only other win here was against the Jazz. Not a particularly successful stretch of games, but when you're without your second best player, you're probably going to lose quite a lot here. Davidson shot well in this game. Baldwin in his place led us in scoring in this victory. In terms of what happened for All-Star Weekend, in the Rising Stars, Lowry had 18, 3, and 2. AC Stevens played, and you got to imagine Andre Stevens would have also played had he been there. Anthony led Team USA in scoring. Dino Rancic led Team World. I don't believe we have anybody on this team. I do recognize some of these names, like Ward is the... Oh, that's not the right Ward. Never mind. I don't recognize these names. But three-point contest winner is Steph, and slam dunk contest would be Asar Thompson out in Milwaukee. And now, just a general end of the episode, what I want to do is take a look at both the team stats as well as where the NBA standings sit. Here in the East, Indiana Pacers best in conference. Hornets, Pistons, Celtics, Cavs behind them form the top 5. Bulls, the other team projected to not have to play in the play-in. Right now, the play-in is Magic, Nets, Knicks, and Raptors. In terms of where we are, we're third worst in the conference. We're 7 games out of the play-in, so you got to imagine we will not be making that this season. Out in the West, best team is the Seattle Sonics. Yes, they had that pretty awesome offseason here, and their team is really good now with the additions of Jalen Green and Scotty Barnes and Alperen Şengün. Number 1 seed in the West. Rockets, number 2, of course. They made the win now move of trying to go get Trae Young. They have elite defense behind them, and I think this is the kind of team that can really actually unlock Trae Young and can win with him. I think this is a very exciting team out in Houston. They got multiple guys 80 plus on the bench. Their entire bench actually is also 80 plus. This team is really deep, really deep. San Antonio, Lonzo Ball, Giddey Johnson, Clark Gaines, so I believe they just drafted, as well as Wembanyama with Damian Paul. They traded for Lonzo. We'll talk about everybody that got traded this season. Damian Paul was starting for the most of the year, but really solid team here as well. Mavericks in 4th, Grizzlies, Timberwolves. Those are the top 6 that will be, if the playoffs started today, in the playoffs. The play-in would be Blazers, Warriors, Pelicans, and Kings. Talked about in the offseason finding a trade partner for Jamal Murray because they signed him and I didn't think it was a good move. Didn't really find one that I liked. I could have done the move I did for Trae Young for Jamal Murray. I just considered, I think if you could have either of them, the Rockets would have rather had Trae Young, and so that's why I moved Trae Young. So, but a team where all their best players are guards, working out for them. So there you have it. And then the Clippers are last in the West. So our picks looking really good here as we are now about 3/4 of the way through the season. We're actually projected to have a better pick than the Clippers at this point. Haven't had that all season. But the 3rd and 4th odds right now as we get to now about 2 months left in the season. Another thing I wanted to look at, like I said, was all of the trades that went down throughout the year. Lopez flipped for Barnes. Shake Milton netted a first. Derek White for Vucevic. Interesting. This, of course, the one manual trade we did. OG Anunoby flip for Lonzo Ball from the Spurs. Looks like whoever got traded there got cut. I guess they just wanted to unload Isaiah Hartenstein there. None of these are super big trades. The Pistons got themselves a center they really needed. Of course, our trades early on in the season as well. So not the most massive trade year. I think the Pistons, a contender, getting a center was pretty impactful. I think OG Anunoby for Lonzo Ball is impactful. This one's impactful with Trae Young. Those would probably be the ones that I think are going to have much of an impact as to how this season might shake out by the time it ends. And now finally, let's go ahead and take a look here at what our players are doing now as we're 60 games through. I think the last time we did this was after like a month in the season, so it's definitely time to get an update on how our players are performing. Sidney Lowry at 22 points a game, up 4. I think the last time we checked he was at 23, so it's gone down a bit. Still up about a rebound and a half and about an assist. Steals are up, blocks are up a bit. Field goal percentage is up 5%, and his 3-point percentage is up, which it wasn't last time if I recall. And there you have that. Andre Stevens, 16 points a game, nothing to compare it to. 5.5 rebounds, 2.5 assists, and about 1.5 stocks, a little bit over that. His field goal percentage was sky high last time. It's gone down to earth a little bit, but 48% is still really good. 3-point percentage was also sky high last time. That has gone down to earth for what you would expect for him as well. Third in scoring on the team is AC Stevens. The Stevens front court at 2 and 3, 14 points, up about a point from last season, about a little over a half of a rebound, down in assists, down in steals, but up in blocks, and field goal percentage much higher, as is his free throw percentage, which is nice to see. Patrick Baldwin has been quite good for us, career high in points per game, shooting 42% nearly from 3, 3.5 rebounds, 1.5 assists. And that tracks. When we watch the games, I feel like he's doing quite well, and you can see that that's happening in simulation as well. Moses Moody, he is averaging 11.3, a career high for him. Rebounds the same, assists the same. Steals tied for his career high. Field goal percentage is dipped a little bit. I think he was like 49% last time, but I still think that's solid. His 3-point percentage is hit a career high here in his 30 minutes a game. I still think he's been a very solid starter for us. Stewart, 7.5 points, 6 rebounds on 45%. That's a little bit low for a center, I will say. His 3-point shooting, I think the only time he's shot is I think he shot 2 in the games that we've watched. Let's see. Does he have more than 2 3-point attempts? He has 1 more than that. So he's shot 1 time in simulation all year. Davidson, his field goal percentage is at 35. I think it was low 30s last time we checked, so it has risen as the season's gone along. 25% from 3 isn't good, but man, when we watch, I feel like he actually hits it shots pretty well, and I've seen him have good games throughout the year. I think he's just very hit and miss, which I would expect of a player of where he's at. Zaire Williams, 38% is his career low. Has not been shooting very well for us. Also his lowest with our team in terms of 3-point percentage, lowest in points. Minutes I'd imagine is lowest as well, yeah, but not by like a ton from his first year. Is a bit of a dip from his second year. Just have not seen the same Zaire Williams that we saw in the first 2 years, I think. Robinson, when he's played, I mean, he's always had terrible field goal percentage with us, but when we watch, he actually hits threes really well. And then Wilson Fisher here, up in points, but down in efficiency. Rebounds are up, assists are up by a lot, as are steals. This is what we're here for, the assists and the steals. His turnovers for his assists are pretty high, I will admit though, but mostly a defensive player. Jalen Johnson, His shooting's up a bit. I think it was like 33 last we checked, but still kind of like with Zaire Williams. These are guys that we've had since the beginning, and they're kind of not having the same caliber of season that we're used to from these guys. Green's played mostly with the Warriors. I think he played one game for us. Hudson still played 2 games, but I would like to check in on his G League stats. Let's do that now. Playing with the Hustle, which makes sense since we are in Tennessee. He is now shooting over 30%. This is the first time I've checked on him where his shooting is over 30%. Getting a little bit better there with 9, 5, and 4 in the G League, but I still think, 31%, not good enough for a call-up, I think. Proving that the G League is the right spot for Hudson for this season. Below a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio as well. Not great for the point guard position. And last thing I want to do is just take a look where Stevens is on the rookie ladder. He has second most in minutes, leading rookies in points. He's 4th in rebounds. Assist wise, he is 6th. Steals, he's 7th. Blocks, he's 6th. Field goal percentage, if you take out the guys who haven't really played much, like Miles is ahead of him, I'd say. Ellis as well, but 3rd there. I think he's been really good, and I think at this point in the season you could definitely look at award races. I imagine he'd have to be favorite for Rookie of the Year. Giannis favorite for MVP right now. Herman Person actually ahead of Andre Stevens. How? Andre Stevens nearly doubling him in points. Yeah, Herman Person is a better rebounder, but there's no way. Especially because the Warriors aren't like this great team. Like if he was this great defensive center for a top 3 seed in the West, maybe. The Warriors are a play-in team. I think Andre Stevens ultimately wins it, if I'm being honest from what I'm seeing here. No way Herman Person is Rookie of the Year over Andre Stevens here. But there you go. That's all I've got for this episode. A lot of non-gameplay stuff happening. Hope you enjoyed it. I certainly did. Be back soon with another episode. And until then, sound up.